Hi, welcome back to the I Can't Have Nice Things YouTube channel. Today we're going to be working on a very old auger. It was a yard sale find. We have no idea if this thing is going to work or not, but let's see if we can get it to run. Here it is. This is the Feldman post hole digger. It's a good look up here. It doesn't look like it's running quite a long time. From everything I've read about these, Feldman made two of these. There was like a 70 and an 80 model. This is an 80 model. I've seen a lot of these that were used to drill holes for ice fishing. There's not a whole lot of ice fishing that goes on in this part of Kentucky, but I'm thinking we could probably get this thing running and stick a auger bit on it and see if we can drill some post holes. That'd be awfully nice to have one of these whenever we needed it. It's very dirty. Looks like it has some fuel in it. Let's see what this is all about. See down in there? Looks like there's some sediment in the bottom of that tank. That might be water. It's definitely something. Let's go ahead and check this air filter real quick. Just a piece of foam. Set this thing sideways. This is kind of a wiry mesh screen. Let's put that back down in there. Doesn't look like there's any mice nests or anything blocking us up from going ahead and pulling this over. I'll put my spark tester in here, see if we got any spark, and then let's see if we can get this thing to cough a little bit maybe. So what we'll do is pop this spark plug off and use our spark checker. I just want to see if this thing has any spark whatsoever for that bulb to light up. Yeah, it's got spark. The next step would be maybe dribble a little bit of fuel down the carburetor, see if we can get it to hit, maybe run for a second. See where we need to go from there, whether we need to start checking into our carb, fuel system. I do plan on scrubbing this whole thing down, maybe repainting these arms, making this thing look a lot nicer, especially if we can get it to run well. I used to have a nice bottle that you could dribble a little bit of fuel down in there, but you put anything down around here, it seems to just disappear. See what it does. I cannot believe that. That was the first pull. I swear that was not staged. That thing hit on the first pull. A little bit more down in there. See if we can get it to run. A little bit, just a little bit longer. So what I noticed when I just started up was really great. This thing hit on the very first pull. It was actually spitting dirt out all from down here. Actually, a little came out up here too. All this loose dirt. That tells me I probably need to pull this housing off. I'd say there's probably some mud dauber nests up in here, those wasps that build those nests out of mud. Let's go ahead and pull this housing off. I'll probably pull the carburetor off and spray some carb clean up in here. When I put a little bit of fuel in here just now, I've seen some dribble out the bottom. I'm hoping that is this gasket right here. I can replace that pretty quickly. You know, that it might be this diaphragm. There's a diaphragm inside here. If that's bad, I'm gonna have to completely rebuild the carburetor right now, which I may end up doing regardless. But let's go ahead and take this thing apart a little bit, see what we got going on, and see if we can get it to run a little bit longer. Okay, so like I thought, probably should have pulled this housing off first, but this is a giant mud dauber's nest. It was just getting chewed up in the coil here. I'm gonna get some compressed air and blow all this out. Now that we've found that giant mud dauber nest up here, let's pull this carburetor off, or this, at least the air cleaner. I'm almost certain there's supposed to be an O-ring right here. I don't see it. I'd say we're probably missing an O-ring right off the bat. Alright, I'm going to put you down. I'm going to undo this linkage up in here and pull the carburetor off. Inside here, there is a little tiny spring. That's the return throttle spring. It's actually broken. It's right underneath here between the carburetor housing and here. I don't even know if you can see it. It's right there. Right underneath here. That spring is broken. I'm going to have to get online real quick and do a little bit of reading. I don't know if I can even buy that spring. That would probably be why this unit was not being used anymore. I'd say probably because hitting the throttle wouldn't give it throttle. So I'm going to get online and look it up real quick. See if I can figure out what's going on. This is a Walbro carburetor. Let me figure this out real quick, and then we'll jump back on this, and I might have to order some parts. I'm assuming I'm definitely going to have to order some parts, but we'll see. With this carburetor being off a older auger, they no longer produce the parts for this, but I was able to find some part number matches from other model carburetors and order a kit like this. Let's see if we get the number on there. That is a K20 WTA. Now I'm pretty sure all of the parts won't match up, but what I'm mainly looking at right now is to get this diaphragm put back in to see if it even lines up. So let's see. I mean, that looks pretty much the same. So what we will do is lay this piece on here first. Face the little metal thing, the little movie reel looking piece will be facing in. We will add our thicker spacer on here, and then our plate will go over that. What I'd like to do is reinstall this on the motor before I go any further and see if I can get any kind of run time out of this engine. We've already cleaned all the mud dauber's nests out of that motor, so it shouldn't be a problem to get it started and have it run just a little bit longer now. Reinstall the governor. still won't be any throttle. See where this is supposed to open when this closes here, this little guy here. But because there's no replacement spring to be found for this carburetor and or no carburetor to be found, I also looked for a completely used carburetor, couldn't find one. So we will have to set something up to be able to use this. I was thinking possibly a small return spring, or maybe even for testing purposes a rubber band of some kind. Just something to open this to get more throttle while test running. Okay, we reconnected the fuel line and put the top back on it. I haven't test fired this at all yet. Turn the ignition on, choke on. Let's give it a couple test pulls and see if we can get any sort of fire out of this. Went ahead and dumped a little bit of fuel down the carburetor, and we're going to see if we can get any fire now. Okay, what I'm going to do is keep adding fuel and try to get this thing to idle for a little bit. This thing's a bit awkward to work on, so I'm going to keep fiddling around with adjusting choke and carb and adding fuel and see what I can get. So what I've done for testing purposes is added this little rubber band here to get that throttle arm to move. All right. It might be running a little bit rich, but this thing's designed to run on 24-to-1, so it's made to run rich. First startup, first run, seems to be in pretty good condition. So a few little things here and there with a throttle spring in the cleanup, and possibly some gear lube down in the gear reducer down here, and we'll have ourselves a nice little auger. Okay, so I'm really happy with how this turned out. The fact that this thing's running at all is awesome. The next step is going to be finishing up the carburetor tuning, that throttle spring, cleaning this thing up, and getting an auger for it to test it out. But that'll have to come on part 2 next week because I've run out of time. Most of the week was spent waiting for parts to actually complete this thing. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for part 2 next week when we get this thing outside and drill a few holes with it.